What if one mistake could unravel an entire world? Captain Marvel, known for her unmatched power, arrives on the peaceful planet of Zathura to stop a growing cosmic threat. But when her actions inadvertently trigger the destruction of the entire planet, she finds herself facing a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. Now, with the release of a deadly cosmic entity, can she undo the damage before the galaxy itself falls into chaos? Prepare for a journey of power, guilt, and redemption in what happened when Captain Marvel accidentally destroyed planet Zathura. Zathura was a planet that seemed to defy the natural limits of progress. It existed at the heart of the Omega Nebula, surrounded by the glittering brilliance of three suns. From a distance, it appeared as a beacon of light and energy, its surface shimmering with the glow of crystalline cities that sprawled like living mosaics. These cities were not just homes to the Zathurans, they were marvels of engineering, their towering structures powered by clean, endless energy harnessed from the suns. The Zathurans had mastered the art of coexistence with their environment, their technological advancements blending seamlessly with the natural beauty of their planet. For centuries, Zathura had been the pride of the Galactic Federation. It was hailed as the pinnacle of civilization, a planet that had overcome the greed, conflict, and ecological destruction that plagued so many others. Diplomats, scientists, and explorers from across the galaxy visited Zathura, marveling at its achievements and seeking to learn from its people. The Zathurans themselves were a serene and intellectual species dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge and the betterment of all life. They were known for their advancements in energy manipulation, medicine, and interstellar diplomacy, often mediating disputes among warring factions in the galaxy. But beneath the surface of this utopia lay a secret that few outside the Zathuran Council knew, a secret so ancient and dangerous that even speaking of it was forbidden. Deep within the planet's crust, buried beneath miles of crystalline bedrock, was the Eternium Nexus. This was no ordinary energy source. It was a relic from a time before recorded history, its origins lost to the myths of the galaxy. The Nexus was a core of unimaginable power capable of creating and destroying on a cosmic scale. To the Zathurans, it was both a blessing and a curse. While its energy had fueled their rise to greatness, it was also a ticking time bomb, a force so unstable that even their greatest minds could barely comprehend it. The Nexus had remained dormant for millennia, its chaotic energies contained by ancient technology that predated even the Zathurans themselves. The Council had sworn to protect this secret at all costs. The stability of the Nexus was the foundation of their civilization, but they understood that tampering with it could lead to catastrophic consequences. Yet, as centuries passed, complacency crept in. The warnings of the past faded into legend, and the true nature of the Eternium Nexus became a shadowed part of their history, known only to the most trusted few. From the stars, Zathura appeared invincible, a utopia immune to the chaos of the galaxy. But like a crystal with a hidden flaw, it was fragile in ways unseen. And soon, an unwitting force from beyond would test the limits of its resilience. The Eternium Nexus, buried and forgotten, was not as dormant as the Zathurans believed. Deep within its core, a faint pulse began to stir, like the first tremor of an earthquake. The peace and prosperity of Zathura were about to face their greatest challenge yet. Captain Marvel approached Zathura with a sense of urgency that outweighed even her usual resolve. The distress signal from the Omega Nebula had been unlike any she'd encountered. Initial readings indicated the presence of a rogue black hole, its gravitational pull intensifying with alarming speed. Entire asteroid fields had already been consumed, and nearby planets were beginning to experience orbital shifts. Worse still, the anomaly was moving. Black holes were not supposed to behave this way. They were static, fixed points in the fabric of space. This one, however, seemed alive, as though some unseen force were guiding it. As she neared Zathura, the scope of the threat became clearer. The black hole's event horizon pulsed irregularly, as though its core were unstable. What should have been a smooth sphere of devouring darkness flickered with bursts of light, the kind seen when matter collides violently with antimatter. It wasn't just consuming, it was growing, expanding faster than any natural phenomenon she had ever seen. The planet itself was already within the outer edges of its gravitational reach, though the Zathuran's advanced technology had managed to maintain a tenuous shield against its pull. For now. Ow. From her vantage point above the planet, Marvel scanned for any anomalies that might explain the rogue black hole's presence. What she found was unexpected. An energy signature radiating from Zathura itself. The readings were erratic, fluctuating between extremes that defied conventional understanding. It was as if the planet's core was emitting bursts of power that resonated with the black hole, feeding its instability. The Zathurans were known for their advanced energy systems, but nothing on this scale had ever been documented. Whatever was happening below the surface of Zathura, it was directly linked to the growing threat above. Marvel quickly assessed her options. The Galactic Federation was too far away to mobilize in time, and Zathura's defenses, advanced though they were already straining under the black hole's influence. She would have to act alone. Years of experience had honed her instincts in situations like this, and her initial plan seemed straightforward enough. If she could neutralize the black hole's core, its gravitational pull would weaken, and Zathura could stabilize. She began calibrating an energy pulse, one designed to disrupt the singularity's core without triggering a collapse. But even as she prepared to execute her plan, unease crept into her mind. Something about the energy signature from Zathura didn't sit right. It wasn't just powerful, it was old. There was a weight to it, a resonance that spoke of an origin far beyond the technological prowess of even the Zathurans. Yet time was a luxury she didn't have. The planet's shield was beginning to falter, and the black hole's pull grew stronger with every passing second. Marvel launched the energy pulse directly at the heart of the anomaly, her confidence unshaken. From her position in orbit, she watched as the pulse struck its target, dispersing in a dazzling array of light. For a brief moment, it seemed to work. The black hole's flickering stabilized, and its growth slowed. But then, something unexpected happened. The energy signature from Zathura surged violently, brighter and stronger than before. Deep within the planet, a chain reaction had begun, one that Marvel hadn't anticipated. Her intervention, meant to save the planet, had instead awakened something far more dangerous. The Eternium Nexus, buried deep within Zathura's crust, absorbed the energy pulse with a hunger that defied comprehension. For centuries, the Nexus had remained dormant, a silent giant slumbering beneath the crystalline surface. But Marvel's calculated energy pulse, designed to neutralize the black hole, instead acted as a trigger. The Nexus, destabilized by the pulse, erupted in a cascade of chaotic energy, sending shockwaves through the planet's core. Zathura's surface trembled violently as tectonic plates shifted under the strain. Fissures, glowing with the molten energy of the Nexus, tore through cities, splitting crystalline towers and shattering their foundations. The once serene sky turned an ominous crimson, its hue deepened by the clouds of debris erupting from the planet's interior. Rivers of molten light emerged from the fractures, flowing in every direction, consuming everything in their path. Above the planet, Marvel watched in stunned disbelief as the destruction unfolded. She had seen worlds on the brink of collapse before, but Zathura's disintegration was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. The energy emanating from the Nexus wasn't just destroying the planet, it was tearing at the very fabric of reality. The planetary shield, once hailed as an unbreakable defense, collapsed in an instant, unable to withstand the raw power unleashed from within. Beneath the surface, the Nexus's energy coursed upward, obliterating the delicate ecosystems that had flourished for centuries. The Zathurans, despite their technological advancements, were powerless against the forces at play. Entire cities were swallowed by the ground, their inhabitants vanishing in moments as the earth consumed them. Structures that had stood for millennia crumbled as the tremors grew more intense. The Nexus was no longer dormant, and its awakening spelled doom for all. The energy radiating from the Nexus ignited a chain reaction that extended far beyond Zathura. In space, the rogue black hole, once a singular anomaly, seemed to respond to the planet's upheaval. Its event horizon expanded rapidly, pulling in nearby debris and distorting the gravitational stability of the surrounding star systems. Wormholes began forming spontaneously, collapsing as quickly as they appeared, creating temporal rifts that sent shockwaves rippling through the galaxy. Marvel struggled to comprehend the scale of the disaster she had inadvertently unleashed. Her plan had been precise, calculated to preserve Zathura while neutralizing the threat of the black hole. Yet, in her effort to save the planet, she had activated a force beyond her understanding. The Eternium Nexus was not just an energy source, it was a volatile relic of a forgotten era, its power far exceeding the capabilities of modern technology. Desperate to contain the devastation, Marvel began searching for solutions. But the readings from her instruments painted a grim picture. The Nexus's energy was growing exponentially, and the planet's structural integrity was collapsing faster than she could act. She detected faint signals from the surface Zathurans who had somehow survived the initial chaos. If there was any chance of salvaging the situation, it lay in those survivors and the secrets they might hold about the Nexus. Time, however, was running out, and Zathura was crumbling into nothingness. The destruction of Zathura was a calamity of cosmic proportions, but its devastation did not remain confined to the planet itself. The eruption of the Eternium Nexus triggered a cascading series of catastrophic events that rippled outward, affecting the surrounding star systems. Marvel watched from orbit as shockwaves of raw energy radiated from Zathura, destabilizing nearby celestial bodies. The black hole, already an anomaly, began to grow erratically, consuming everything in its path with a speed that defied natural laws. What had once been a single rogue phenomenon was now a rapidly expanding region of chaos. Asteroid belts that had orbited peacefully for millennia were torn apart, their fragments drawn into the black hole's insatiable maw. Neighboring planets experienced catastrophic atmospheric disturbances as their orbits were disrupted by the gravitational flux. Marvel's instruments detected wormholes opening at random, their edges flickering with unstable energy before collapsing violently. These temporal rifts sent fragments of Zathura's energy and debris scattering across vast stretches of space, creating unpredictable hazards in systems far from the Omega Nebula. Marvel's attempts to mitigate the damage were relentless. She pushed her powers to their limits, creating energy barriers to deflect debris and stabilizing smaller rifts where she could. Yet, for every crisis she managed to contain, two more seemed to arise. The scale of destruction was simply too vast. Her efforts were akin to trying to hold back a supernova with bare hands. Zathura's disintegration had unleashed forces that no single being, not even one as powerful as Marvel, could fully control. Amidst the chaos, her scanners picked up faint distress signals from the planet's surface. Against all odds, pockets of survivors had managed to endure the initial destruction. These signals came from deep beneath Zathura's surface, in areas shielded by the remnants of ancient technology. Marvel realized that the Zathurans, with all their advancements, might hold the key to understanding the Nexus and stopping its energy from spreading further. Descending into the planet's deteriorating remains was a risk Marvel knew she had to take. Zathura's atmosphere had become a maelstrom of energy storms, its surface cracking apart as the planet's core destabilized further. Marvel pushed through the chaos, navigating falling debris and streams of molten energy that spewed into the air. The signals grew stronger as she neared a massive chasm that had opened in the planet's crust. Beneath it lay what appeared to be a vast underground sanctuary, glowing faintly with the light of protective energy fields. The sanctuary was a marvel, its architecture vastly different from the crystalline cities above. It was ancient, built with materials that resisted even the destructive forces of the Nexus. Inside, Marvel found the survivors Zathurans who had sought refuge in what they called the Deep Cradle. This place was more than a shelter, it was a vault of knowledge containing records and artifacts from Zathura's earliest history. Among them were texts and relics related to the Eternium Nexus, fragments of a forgotten era when the planet had been a battleground for forces far greater than the Zathurans themselves. The survivors, though battered and grieving, revealed the truth Marvel had feared. The Nexus was never meant to be an energy source. It was a containment device built to imprison a cosmic entity capable of consuming entire galaxies. By destabilizing the Nexus, Marvel had unwittingly set the being free. Even as she processed this revelation, the ground beneath the sanctuary trembled, and a faint, otherworldly pulse echoed through the air. The entity was waking, and its hunger would not be confined to Zathura. The survivors of Zathura, hidden within the ancient sanctuary, were a stark contrast to the vibrant civilization they had once been. Their faces bore the marks of exhaustion and grief, but their eyes burned with determination. The Deep Cradle was not merely a refuge, it was a relic of Zathura's forgotten past, built during an era when the Eternium Nexus was first discovered. Its architecture was unlike anything on the planet's surface, massive, monolithic structures carved from obsidian-like stone and reinforced with intricate energy conduits that hummed faintly with power. It had been constructed with one purpose: to withstand the destructive force of the Nexus should it ever awaken. Marvel's presence was met with a mixture of hope and desperation. To the survivors, she was both savior and unwitting harbinger of destruction. They quickly explained the history of the Nexus, their voices trembling as they recounted the forbidden knowledge of their ancestors. The Eternium Nexus, they revealed, was not a natural phenomenon. It was a prison designed to contain a cosmic entity known only as the Devourer. This being was not bound by physical form but existed as a mass of dark, sentient energy that thrived on the destruction of matter and the consumption of life. Eons ago, the entity had nearly annihilated the galaxy before being captured and sealed within the Nexus by an alliance of ancient civilizations. Over time, the true purpose of the Nexus had been forgotten, buried under layers of secrecy in the passage of countless generations. The Zathurans had unknowingly built their civilization atop a ticking time bomb, their advancements powered by the faint residual energy the Nexus released. The elders of Zathura had long feared the day the containment might fail, but no one had anticipated it would be triggered by an external force, a force like Marvel's energy pulse. As Marvel absorbed the gravity of the situation, her scanners detected an ominous shift in the Nexus's energy. It was no longer just radiating power, it was emitting a pulse, rhythmic and deliberate, like the heartbeat of a waking giant. The survivors explained that the Devourer was regaining its strength. The Nexus's containment field had been irreparably damaged, and with each passing moment, the entity's influence grew. Already, its dark energy had begun seeping into the surrounding systems, exacerbating the chaos in space. Marvel realized the enormity of the challenge before her. Containing the entity again would require immense power, far greater than what she had at her disposal. The Nexus fragments scattered across the galaxy were the key. If she could retrieve and reassemble them, she might have a chance of restoring the prison. But there was no guarantee the containment would hold, and time was running out. The entity's awakening was accelerating, and with it, the collapse of Zathura's remains. The survivors revealed one final piece of information. Within the deep cradle lay a device, an ancient artifact created by those who had built the Nexus. It was known as the Echo Matrix, a mechanism capable of amplifying and directing energy with precision. With it, Marvel could potentially harness the fragment's power and recreate the containment field. Yet using the Matrix came with a risk. The energy required to activate it could destroy what little remained of Zathura and possibly claim Marvel's life in the process. Determined to make amends for her role in the disaster, Marvel resolved to act. She knew that the survival of the galaxy depended on her success, and failure would mean unleashing a force of annihilation far greater than the black hole she had come to stop. As she prepared to leave the sanctuary and retrieve the Nexus fragments, the ground beneath her feet trembled once more. A low, resonant sound echoed the depths, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The Devourer was no longer just awakening, it was reaching out. Its presence could be felt, a growing shadow that loomed over all. The race against time began with a sense of urgency that dwarfed anything Marvel had experienced before. Every second mattered as the Devourer's presence expanded beyond Zathura, its influence seeping into the surrounding star systems. The black hole that had initially brought her to the planet was now a puppet of the entity, its chaotic growth fueled by the Devourer's dark energy. Entire sectors of space were succumbing to gravitational distortions and temporal rifts, the galaxy unraveling piece by piece. With the Echo Matrix secured in the deep cradle, Marvel launched into action. The survivors had provided her with coordinates for the scattered fragments of the Nexus, relics of the original containment mechanism. Each fragment was hidden across the galaxy, buried in locations chosen for their isolation and protective environments. The fragments were not just pieces of technology, they were imbued with the same energy that once bound the Devourer, their design an intricate fusion of science and something that bordered on the mystical. The first fragment lay within the shattered remains of a moon orbiting a gas giant several light years from Zathura. Marvel pushed herself to her limits, weaving through asteroid belts destabilized by the black hole's influence. The moon's surface was a graveyard of destruction, its once solid crust fractured into jagged shards. She located the fragment embedded within a crystalline cavern, its glow faint but unmistakable. As she retrieved it, the cavern began to collapse, destabilized by the fragment's removal. So escaping the moon's crumbling remains, she barely managed to return to her ship before the debris was swallowed by the expanding black hole. The second fragment presented an even greater challenge. It was hidden on a barren, storm-racked planet where electromagnetic pulses raged across the surface. Navigating through the planet's volatile atmosphere, Marvel endured relentless energy storms that tested even her resilience. When she reached the fragment, it was encased in a protective sphere of ancient technology, its mechanisms corroded with age. She forced her way through the barrier, the effort draining her strength, but the fragment was finally in her grasp. Each retrieval came at a cost. With every fragment secured, the Devourer's energy signature grew stronger, as though it could sense her efforts and was accelerating its escape in response. Marvel's powers, immense though they were, began to wane under the strain of the monumental task. The fragment's energy was volatile, reacting violently to the proximity of the Devourer's influence, and she had to use every ounce of her strength to keep them stable. Returning to Zathura's remains with the fragments, Marvel re-entered the deep cradle where the survivors awaited her. The Echo Matrix stood ready, its intricate design pulsing with dormant potential. Reassembling the fragments into the Nexus was a task of precision, each piece fitting together like a cosmic puzzle. The energy they emitted grew with each addition, filling the sanctuary with a blinding light that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. But as Marvel connected the final fragment, the ground quaked violently. The Devourer, fully awakened now, lashed out with tendrils of dark energy that reached through the fabric of space, converging on Zathura. Its form was no longer contained within the Nexus, but loomed as a colossal shadow, a formless void that absorbed light itself. The sanctuary trembled under its assault, the ancient walls beginning to crack under the strain. Marvel had completed the Nexus's reconstruction, but activating it would require channeling energy on a scale that risked obliterating everything around her, including herself. The galaxy teetered on the brink of annihilation, and the choice before her was clear. To save countless worlds, she would have to stake everything on the Echo Matrix and confront the Devourer directly. The sanctuary trembled as the Devourer's tendrils pierced the atmosphere, reaching down like shadows made solid. Its immense presence dominated the skies above Zathura's remains, its dark energy consuming light and sound, plunging the surroundings into an oppressive silence. Marvel stood before the fully reconstructed Eternium Nexus, the fragments pulsing with chaotic power. The Echo Matrix, glowing faintly, hummed with potential. It was ready to amplify the energy she needed to re-establish the containment field, but at a cost. Marvel could feel the weight of the Devourer's presence bearing down on her, an ancient hunger that sought to devour not just Zathura but the very fabric of existence. The survivors, huddled in the sanctuary's deepest chambers, looked to her as their final hope. She knew that activating the Nexus would require a massive influx of energy, far more than the fragments themselves could generate. The only source powerful enough was her own life force, channeled through the Echo Matrix. She braced herself, stepping into the center of the Matrix. The intricate patterns carved into its surface began to glow brighter, resonating with her energy as she summoned every ounce of her strength. The Nexus responded in kind, its fragments aligning perfectly as streams of light and shadow intertwined around them. The room filled with a deafening roar as the energy intensified, shaking the sanctuary to its core. The Devourer sensed the threat and lashed out with a torrent of dark energy, its tendrils crashing against the Nexus's forming field. Each strike sent shockwaves through the sanctuary, but Marvel held firm, her body radiating with light, as she pushed back against the overwhelming force. The containment field began to take shape, a lattice of energy expanding outward from the Nexus, weaving through space and time. The Matrix amplified her power, sending waves of light surging through the Devourer's form. The entity roared, its formless mass writhing as the lattice closed in. It fought with a fury born of desperation, tearing at the edges of the containment field, but the Nexus held steady. Marvel's vision blurred as the energy she channeled pushed her beyond her limits. Every fiber of her being burned with intensity, her essence fusing with the light that now engulfed the sanctuary. As the containment field reached its peak, the Nexus emitted a final pulse of energy, a blinding surge that swept across the galaxy. The Devour's form twisted violently, its tendrils retreating as the field sealed around it. With a deafening crack, the Nexus locked into place, its fragments glowing in unison. The Devourer was trapped once more, its presence reduced to a faint, pulsating core within the Nexus. The sanctuary fell silent, its walls scorched and crumbling. Marvel collapsed to her knees, her energy nearly spent. The survivors emerged cautiously, their faces a mixture of relief and sorrow. Zathura was gone, its civilization reduced to ruins, but the galaxy had been saved. Marvel rose slowly, her body weakened but her spirit unbroken. As she gazed at the Nexus, she understood the magnitude of her actions. The containment had held, but the cost had been immense. The galaxy had been spared from annihilation, but Zathura's legacy now rested in the hands of its few remaining survivors. They looked to her not as a destroyer, but as the one who had faced the impossible and endured. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Horizon Stories for more thrilling tales of science fiction and adventure.